Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another week's podcast of the Words of Life with Kevin and Adam. We're diving back into the book of Judges. We're going to pick it up in chapter 6 today with the study and the story of Gideon. Now, the story of Gideon actually runs 4 chapters all the way through chapter 9. And we may be able to get into chapter 7 today, but there's a lot in chapter 6. So we're going to just play it by ear and not take up too much time. We'll just see how far we go. But before we do that, we'll want to make sure we say hello to Kevin. And
Hey, Adam, how's it going?
it's pretty okay. We got snowed in.
Yeah, I saw some pictures there of your deck in snow, and it looked like you had several inches there. There, at least on that
I mean,
picture that I saw.
if you just look at the pile that was on the top of the deck railings, it was probably 6 to 8 inches.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. That's what I was guessing.
And then, of course, it record low temperatures after that, making it freeze overnight. So we had some issues, but they did a pretty good job salting, and all the main roads are pretty clear. So
yeah,
we're looking all right.
I was talking to some coworkers this morning, and again, most of the people I work with are either the Midwest or East Coast, and so one's somewhere in Illinois and Indiana, and then others are back in New York and Massachusetts and things like that. And yeah, snow. One of my coworkers had to take part of the day off because he had to take his cars in the mechanic because he thinks there's some gas frozen in the fuel line because the car won't go over 5 miles an hour.
Wow.
And so I was like, well, let me show you. I went outside and took a picture of, said, this is what my backyard looks like presently.
Yeah.
Right. It's really,
tropical
it's
oasis.
real brutal out here. It's tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, everybody's having snow difficulties, and I'm like, it's 77 here today. So it's lovely, but
crazy. Well, in the interim, so I think I told you that I got a chance to preach a couple weeks ago at our home congregation, and in the middle of that sermon, I was part of the sermon was talking about the body of the church being one body. And the references in Ephesians talking about how all of the members are important. And if you have one member of your body that's weak or suffering, the whole body is weak and suffering. And I talked about my tooth.
okay.
I just said, my tooth, for instance, right? It's a small thing, but it affects my whole body. It makes me grumpy. It's sapping my energy. And I just made that kind of as an analogy or a connection there. And so one of our newer members, who just recently started attending with us, came up to me afterwards, and I've already spoken with him a bunch of times and befriended him and everything, and it's great. But he came up and says, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
And I knew he was a doctor, a surgeon of some sort, but he's an oral surgeon.
Okay.
So anyway, one long story short, he basically said, "Let me help you.
Yeah.
I want to help you." And so consultation happened, and the best thing was to remove the tooth.
Oh, fine, yeah.
Well, multiple infections and, just all that kind of stuff. So yeah, on Wednesday, I had my tooth extracted.
Ah, that's fun, yeah.
So I'm healing from that. So yeah, anyway, if I sound a little funny, it's because I've got stuff going on.
Yeah, one side of the face there, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, it's pretty amazing. You remove the source of the infection, and all of those things have basically gone away. I'm on some antibiotics still, but I'm only recovering from the extraction part of it at this point, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Nice.
So he did prep it to be able to have an implant down the road if we opt for that, but it's the last molar on the bottom.
And it's the bottom. That's always good too. Yeah, Melissa had a top one extracted 20-something years ago, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she finally went to go get some additional stuff corrected and braces and things and whatever, they're like, oh, we have to do a sinus lift because now, that has fallen and, there's so much space. We got to, so yeah, it's bottom backs as good as they come as far as that goes. Because you don't worry about it.
He's like, you may not even miss it.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
like,
yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, whatever. But it definitely made me appreciate the last chapter of Ecclesiastes a little more.
Yeah, there you go.
As we get older.
For sure.
All right. Well, let's get into Gideon, the story of here in chapter 6 of the book of Judges. And I think it'd be good for us to go ahead and just read at least the intro section all the way through like verse
Oh,
10,
10, yeah.
right? We'll go ahead and read 1 through 10 here. It says, the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. And the hand of Midian overpowered Israel, and because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains, and the caves, and the strongholds, which is pretty interesting because that actually plays some historical significance, throughout the history of Israel. Verse 3 says, for whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza, and leave no sustenance in Israel, and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents. They would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted. So they laid waste, excuse me, as they came in. And Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. So we see here this kind of pattern again, where the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and God was punishing them for a long time. And they finally have had enough, and they're seeking help again, reaching out to the Lord. Verse 7, it says, when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt and brought you out of the house of slavery, and I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice. So again, we see this pattern, and you keep reading these things, and you wonder, just from our perspective, like, why don't they learn the lesson? Why doesn't it stick? That's the question that we always kind of circle back for. And we don't have enough context again, but I would say that part of our problem, so I would say that part of our realization we spoke about a while ago, is that a lot of these were regional and happening in various places throughout Egypt, throughout Israel. And so you don't have like the entire country repeating these things over and over again. You have the same basic pattern being repeated multiple times throughout the region over a long period of time. So
yeah, and you get this generational aspect too. Like, we read it and we hear story after story after story after story, chapter after chapter after chapter. But for them, right, it's generational, right? That these things didn't happen to these people; they happened to 2 generations past, right? And so, the stories get forgotten, the people get lax, they get whatever, right? And so, yeah, it's harder for us because we read it chapter after chapter, and you're like, what? It's again and again and again.
Yeah.
But it would be like your grandchildren.
We're getting it all
right, yeah,
refined into one collection of stories here.
Yeah, right. And so, it's we're making the same mistakes our grandparents did. Okay, well, that makes a little more sense then, perhaps, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you think about even just the history of the U.S., right? We sometimes make the United States of America out to be as if it were the country that God established to be His people again, right? For some reason, that seems to be the attitude of a lot of American Christians, and that's we don't see any prophecies of that being God. Now would I agree that our founding fathers did a pretty good job of creating a system in which it was Judeo-Christian in nature, the foundation of the laws, or seemed to be lining up a lot more with God's will? Yeah, I would agree with that. But you can also see the degradation of that over time, where people have pushed God away from society.
Yeah, and certainly there's in our own country, even there's some indication, obviously, as well. I mean, we're not there; we weren't there 200 plus years ago either. But that there was intended to be this thing like, yes, we will set up a society in which you don't have to serve the Church of England, right? You can practice your own religion as you see fit to do, right? And so that opened that up for, different people came over for different reasons, obviously. But yeah, even then, right? There's different areas that are in different places at different times, that are chasing after different things. There's different generational cycles of things that happen, right? And pushes for this and pushes for that. And whatever things we were really gung-ho for here, then they cycle down.
Mhm.
And then it's back the other way again,
Yep.
80 years later. So it's no different, and it's always the way of people, I suppose. But there's an
Yeah.
interesting
Well,
thing here in this one, right? Is that,
yeah.
this is the first time we get this indication that God sent them a prophet instead of just
Mhm.
a judge, right? To tell them, this is why this is happening to you. And then you'll send a
Yeah.
judge to deliver them.
I didn't look that up. Do we have any indication as to
Not that
which prophet that might have
no, I
been?
don't know that we know, or that it's even somebody who's recorded for us at this point, right? I mean, it's not somebody
Right.
who obviously wrote one of the books, because those are all after this for sure.
Mhm.
They're all, after the kingdom era. And so I don't even know. It's just he raised up a prophet, right? And this is
Yeah.
what the prophet told them. And then after that, he will then send deliverance. So I don't know if this is God trying to say, hey, this is why this is happening. Remember the law. I said this would happen. And also, after I deliver you this time, maybe try a little harder, right? Don't forget this again so fast. This isn't just
Right.
happening because, right? There's a reason that it's
And,
going on.
and it may have been like a much more of a broad area.
Sure.
And it seemed like, the country was
Yeah,
probably.
you're going to hear a lot of different tribes and things that are going to get called out here, right? As this goes on, and it's sufficient enough as well that you're going to get it at some point, at the end of the story. Spoiler alert, right? That they'll
Right.
ask him to be king, and so this is bigger in scope, it seems, and some of the descriptions here, right? And that's
Yes.
an interesting thing, right? It's like every year there's the harvest, and it's not just like they're having to pay off this thing. What happens is every harvest, these people just come in and they camp out in the land and they eat all the stuff, right? And then once they've destroyed everything and taken everything, then they go home. And they just descend every harvest season and take all the stuff, which is different than the, hey, we brought tribute to you, we're serving you as king, right? That just mass importation of people that just harvest all the land and take all the things and then go home.
Like, why plant for ourselves?
Right, we can just
go take it from our neighbor next door.
That's right.
Know?
Yeah. That appears to be the picture here, and it's quite oppressive, right? We see this thing here that they would encamp in these different places. They would sort of dig out these rocks, these holes in the wilderness to hide out in when they come. And then we'll even see Gideon, right, is threshing wheat in a wine press, right? He's on the hide. And so, they're just taking everything they can take. And it says they were brought very low because of it, right? This is for 7 years. This goes on every year, right? And so it's effectively like a 7-year famine in the land, right? Is what it basically is happening. Not because nothing's growing, because there's nothing to harvest anyway when you're done.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But yeah, so God reminds them, of course, of the past, who I am, and you got to remember who I am and what I did for you. And you're in this land with my promises. Had you obeyed them, life would be great for you because I'd be with you and be protecting you. But you've abandoned me, and you're suffering the repercussions, right? All right, so we have the prophet delivering his message, and then why don't you pick it up in verse 11 for us, Kevin, and read for...
Yeah, it says, Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. And Gideon said to him, Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has this all happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the angel of the Lord turned to him and said, Go in this might of yours, and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? And he said to him, Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is weakest in the clan of Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. And the Lord said to him, But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. And he said to him, If now I have found favor in your eyes, then show me a sign that it is you who I speak with. Please do not depart from here until I come to you and bring out my present and set it before you. And he said, I will stay until you return. And so maybe we'll stop right there for a second. So yeah, like we said, we get introduced to this character, Joash, and his son Gideon, and Gideon is there. Like we said, he's threshing out wheat in a wine press, which means he's trying to hide it from the Midianites. Right? He's managed to harvest something. He's trying to process it into flour, but he's not doing it on a threshing floor unless they come and take it from him. Right? And so he's hidden out here. And as he's hidden out, we get the angel of the Lord appears. Now he doesn't know that he's an angel, because he's going to ask, how do I know and what's going on? Right. So it's not like he appears like we might think, glowing and with whatever sorts of characteristics about him, right? He appears to be a prophet to him, it sort of seems like. And he calls him, you mighty man of valor, which is quite ironic or contradictory, perhaps, given the circumstances of what's going on here. And then he'll say things like, go and save them in your might, and you're so correct. And so Gideon is being told things that don't seem to match his experience as far as what God is saying, right, to him. But surprisingly, he does point out, right, if God is with us, why is all this happening, right? Where are the deeds that our fathers had spoken about? Where are the things that happen? Right now, we just find ourselves oppressed in Midian. So I don't know if maybe he didn't get the prophet message, right, of the reason this is why this is happening to you, or what the story is there. But he asks that question, right? Where, if God is with us, why is all this happening to us? I thought we hear about these great things he's done in the past, and yet right now we find ourselves oppressed in this. So his experience is not matching up with what this angel, who he doesn't know is an angel, apparently is telling him.
Yeah. And it seems like, he's definitely one of the remnant, right? One of the faithful. His faith, he's listened to the stories, and he wants to honor God, but his faith is weak because all he sees is the negative. All he sees is the oppression. Where is the God that we've heard about? Who our fathers have told us that our God has done all these wonderful things. Well, why isn't he doing that now?
Yeah.
And that's definitely something that I think we all probably battle with is understanding the timing of the Lord. All of us suffer, and we don't want to suffer. All of us are going to go through trials, and we don't like them. We don't enjoy them. And so when we find ourselves being oppressed, we oftentimes just gravitate to why. Why is it happening to me? Why now?
Yeah.
Why isn't God helping? Why? And it's not necessarily a weak faith, but it comes from a source of pain, right? Those types of questions. And so Gideon, like, I want God to rescue us.
Right.
I want God to defend us. I want to, right? And maybe he was responding with a little bit of anger,
sure,
and passion. That would be how I would, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt?
Right. But
now he's forsaken us.
Forsaken us, right?
Right. And the angel's like, yeah, we need that kind of passion right now.
Go up and deliver them in this might of yours.
You're the guy, right? He's like, whoa, I'm not the guy.
Yeah, and I know we were talking about that as well, right? This sort of there appears to be this humbleness or self-deprecating nature that Gideon has here, where he will constantly be saying, well, wait a minute, not me, right? Here he points out this thing: how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, right? So my family within Manasseh is the weakest, and I'm the least in my father's house. So was he the youngest? Was he? Who knows, right? But I'm the least in my father's house, and so you get this picture there, and we'll see as we keep going, right? He'll be asking for signs and to know that the Lord is with him and these kinds of things. So you get some remnants of things like Moses and things of that nature. What is the sign that this will be the case, and that kind of stuff. And how can I go? I'm slow in speech and these sorts of things. And so he does at the end. He proposes this sort of the first of his tests, if you will, right? How can I know that I'm going to come and bring you a present, right? I'll bring you an offering, and then give me some sort of a sign that you are from God, basically. And so that's what he's asked for. And the angel, right, says, "I'll wait. Go ahead. I'll stay right here. Go ahead. Do what you got to do. Come back." And clearly he knows what he's going to do. But bring your thing, and we'll go from there.
So yeah, I think you read all the way through 15. Is that right?
Through 18, right, where he said, "And I will wait till you return."
Gotcha. Well, I like verse 16. Maybe I was
Yeah.
distracted by something. Verse 16, it says, "And the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man."
Yeah.
And he says, well, okay. Well, if I've really found favor in your sight, I'm going to need some proof,
Yeah.
right?
Show me
Which
a
is what you're
sign.
talking about. So Gideon, in verse 19, went into his house and prepared a young goat and unleavened cakes from an ephah of flour. The meat he put in a basket, and the broth he put in a pot, and brought them to him under the terebinth tree, and presented them. And the angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened cakes, and put them on this rock, and pour the broth over them." And he did so. And the angel of the Lord reached the tip of his staff out that was in his hand, and touched the meat and the unleavened cakes, and fire sprang up from the rock and consumed the meat and the unleavened cakes. Sorry, I was scrolling here. And the angel of the Lord vanished from his sight. So we got some pretty crazy things here. This is reminiscent of, was it Elisha or Elijah?
Yeah, it's reminiscent of a couple different things here, right? This sort
Right?
of picture of the burning up the offering, the sacrifice.
It was Elijah when he went up to against all of the prophets of Baal.
Yeah,
Right? And it was him and 400 prophets of Baal up on the mountain, the high places, and he's like, yeah, your God versus my God,
right. The
right?
God who answers by fire.
Right? Yeah.
And there's no indication of it, but it's interesting because this predates that. Obviously, it makes you wonder a little bit if he's thinking like, yeah, let's do a test like that. Right, we'll put out an offering, and we'll see a God who burns the offering up. Right, just like Gideon's story there.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's do a similar test, but we're gonna scale it up to a national level here, if you will.
Yeah. And we're gonna it's more than broth. We're gonna
Yeah,
just like
douse it with water.
hundreds
Yeah.
of gallons of water
Yeah.
on the offering, right?
And it is an interesting thing here because even though he says, "I'm going to go and get this present for you" or whatever, and he brings this thing to him as though it's like food or whatever. I'm going to bring you this. I've prepared this goat, right? Like she's showing hospitality, but it also has this sacrificial sorts of thing, making the cakes of an ephah of flour and this kind of taking the goat. It is very reminiscent of that he's bringing some sort of sacrificial offering or meal offering as prescribed by the law. And then the angel has him set it down and turns it into a sign, right? By consuming it with fire, by touching it with the end of his staff. And yeah, you do get a little bit of that. Take the broth and pour it over it. Soak it with the broth, whatever you got there. Make sure it's nice and moist. So
and it's on top of a rock.
Yeah, right. We're not in a pile of brush, right? And and the fire springs up and consumes it and then vanishes, then to add to it, just disappears, right? After it there.
I mean, that must have been pretty wild.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. We've seen magic tricks where people vanish.
Yeah, right.
But there was no smoke and mirrors here. This was a true miraculous sign.
Yeah, and you get that very clearly because in 22, right, it says, and then Gideon perceived that he was the angel of the Lord, and Gideon said, "Alas, Lord God, for now I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." Right, so he is very convinced by the sign that this is legitimate, that he was speaking with God's angel here, who was giving him this message, and it appears his fear is God is going to strike me dead even, right? Because then in 23 you get, but the Lord said to him, "Peace be to you, do not fear, you will not die." And so, he's answering this fear which Gideon has not expressed in words. Like, I've seen God face to face, right? And he says, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to kill you. I have a job for you instead. But he is definitely convinced by the sign that is what he has seen. And I don't know if there's a voice from heaven that speaks this to him because the angel is gone at this point, right? But somehow he gets this information that, yep, you've correctly understood the sign, that this is legitimate. And so then he decides to build an altar, right? Gideon builds an altar there to the Lord and called it "The Lord is Peace," right? Or literally, if you look that up, it'd be like Yahweh Shalom, right? Like the Lord is Peace is basically the name of the altar that he builds there. And this day, at least at the writing of the time of this, it still stands at Ophrah, which belongs to the Abiezrites, right? So where he was at that winepress, he built this altar out of the rock that was there, out of whatever the rocks, and he built an altar to the Lord in that location.
Yeah. So then we have that night.
Yeah.
So we have Gideon building this altar for the Lord and doing a sacrifice and praising God. And that night, he gets another vision or some sort of a spoken word to him.
Yeah, God starts talking to him directly at this point, right? After he says, "You will not die." From here on out, we don't get people appearing to him or angels. We just get the Lord spoke to him, the Lord spoke to him, the Lord spoke to him.
Which
that's
is pretty interesting because in this time period, that is unusual.
Yeah, I mean, it was called out specifically that a prophet was sent to say, "Here is the message of God of why you're oppressed," right?
Yep.
And so, and we'll see that happen, as we keep going forward here. Different times where, we saw before Deborah speaking to Barak, but she's some sort of prophetess, right? Because she's judging them, and she says, "Here's the message God has for you," right? So there are prophets at this time, but yeah, it is not, every man is getting revelation from God all the time, right. Just as they go out throughout their day there.
Yep. All right. So then he gets these instructions, right? So apparently Gideon's own house needed to get some cleaning up done because his own house had also been taking part in this idolatry worship.
Yeah.
He says in verse 25, you're supposed to take your father's bull and the second bull, 7 years old, and pull down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is beside it. So apparently Joash, Gideon's father, owned or was the caretaker of and it seems like, as we read on, seems like this was the central idol for the community.
Yeah, and that's why I say there's a little bit where perhaps Gideon is a little self-deprecating there, because he says things like, "My clan is the least in Manasseh." But the picture that we get here is that this is not just some tiny little nobody people, right? Because it will be of the town and this thing, and later we'll see things like there's a whole bunch of brothers and things that are described as like sons of the king, right? And so, how much sway Joash actually has, maybe a little more than Gideon makes it out to be.
Slightly understated, perhaps.
Yes,
right?
Perhaps there. And so, he goes and he tears this down, right? This is the thing.
And it must have been a pretty significant size.
He says
it takes
you two bulls that you're going to yoke up to pull down the altar,
and
to cut down the Asherah pole, right? The carved tree or pole, the altar there. Build an altar to the Lord your God instead, on top of the stronghold here, right? Again, there's some language there that this is a fortified type of location with laid thorn. Then take the second bull, offered as a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah that you cut down. So cut down the idol pole, use that wood to offer one of the two bulls on it. So Gideon took 10 men of his servants. Wait, Gideon's got 10 servants, right? And he did as the Lord told him, but he was too afraid of his family and the men of the town to do it by day, so he did it by night, right? So why is he afraid of the men of the town, right? It's got to be that this altar must have some significance to the townsfolk at large, right? So whether this is Joash is a prominent man of this town, or if it's just a type of a situation where Joash is wealthy enough and his clan is large enough that his family is now effectively a town. And, you think of like the British landed lord system, right? Where you are the lord of the manor, but you have all this land and these sorts of things. And then there are small towns that spring up that exist to take care of your sheep and your whatever, and right, and all this kind of stuff, right? So maybe, Joash is a little bit more of a player than Gideon makes it out to be. That if this is the weakest clan of Manasseh, I'm curious, right?
Well, and yet they were still oppressed by Midian.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole story started off with Gideon hiding this wheat that he was threshing.
Yeah.
Now, because he chose a wine press, which made me think, like agriculturally speaking, the wheat harvest versus the grape harvest.
Yeah, when are those things happening? Yeah.
Probably different times. So the wine press probably was not in use.
Yeah.
Allowing him to thresh the wheat there rather than going to the threshing floor. Right. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's a safe place where they're not going to be looking for any activity to be going on at this time.
Yeah. Now nobody's using the wine press right now, so that's a perfect place for me to go and do the wheat.
But it is interesting that we get now the second time, right? That Gideon has shown sort of trepidation or fear, right? That, hey, I'm hiding out when I'm doing this. okay, I'm going to tear this down, but I'm going to do it at night, right? And so we're going to see this character arc develop of Gideon a little bit here. But, he's starting out in this place where he is not thinking, I'm the guy for this job for sure. But he does it anyway, right? He does go out and he does tear down as the Lord has spoken to him.
But he doesn't. Obviously, it was a pretty noisy job, and there was enough people involved where he didn't get away scot-free.
No,
right?
No. Everyone knows the next morning who does it when they start.
The next morning, everybody's like, who's done this thing?
Yeah.
And verse 29 there, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing.
Yeah.
Then there's an uprising. The men of the town, bring out your sons, he said to Joash, that he may die, for he has broken down the altar of Baal and cut down the Asherah beside it. But Joash said to all who stood against him, will you contend for Baal, or will you save him? Whoever contends for him shall be put to death by morning. If he is a god, let him contend for himself, because his altar has been broken down. Basically throwing down the age-old challenge, if he's really a god,
let him strike Gideon down, right? Yeah.
Let him show up and do something about it.
You don't need to fight for him. If he's a god, he can take care of this himself. Sort of a situation there, right?
Yep.
And so there's this thing where Joash is sort of standing up for that, which makes me sort of wonder, right? If Joash is just glad that someone has finally done this and this has emboldened him in this way, or if he's just saying, "You're not coming after my boy." Right. Anyone who tries to kill my kid, I'm going to have them killed by morning, and let the gods settle it. We don't really know there, but yeah, he does show some sort of.
We don't really have any insight of
Joash's character,
the character of Joash,
no.
But the writer of this account gave credit for the altar to Joash. So I don't know if he was just in charge and he just allowed it to happen because that was what was the culture of the day.
Yeah.
At that point, or whatever. But one, at least he's got some good character about him, and he stood up for Gideon.
Yeah. And then we get this weird thing in 32, right, which will pop up in the next chapter there. And again, depending on what translations people are reading, it's a little hard to parse. The most accurate translation is in verse 32. So on that day, he was called Jerubbaal, because he said, let Baal contend with him since he broke down his altar. And so in English, that sounds like, well, who said that? Joash did. So who's the he? Joash is the he, right? But when you roll forward to the next chapter, in chapter 7, it'll make it clear that Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, right? And so some of the translations will actually pull that back here and render it. So from that day forward, Gideon was called, right? So his father effectively names him that at that time, because of his statement, right? Let him contend for himself, sort of there. So he gets this new cool nickname, I guess, if you will, that people know him by.
Exactly. All right. So picking it up in verse 33. Why don't you take it from there?
Yeah. It says, so now all the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east came together, and they crossed the Jordan and encamped in the valley of Jezreel. But the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon, and he sounded the trumpet, and the Abiezrites were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, and they too were called out to follow him. And he sent messengers to Asher, Zebulun, and Naphtali, and they all went up to meet him. So we get this thing now, which has been called out previously, right? That at the harvest time, all these people come in. And so it's that time now, right? Obviously, because he is threshing this wheat, which also makes you think that Gideon has sort of, he's taken the first threshing. He's taken the first stuff that's harvested, right? Before everyone shows up. He's trying to get what he can before they all show up when he's even doing this threshing in the first place. But then they show up as per schedule, right? They show up to do their thing like they always do. And so, they could have sat it out, possibly, right? There's nothing so big here that, it's not like he's done anything to the Midianites or the Amalekites. They're coming to find food, right? They're not going to be like, who tore down this altar necessarily? But it has given Gideon enough clout, right, that people see that this man is a man of action. He's going to do some stuff, and he's on fire for the Lord, or whatever sort of things they may be thinking. And so when the Spirit of the Lord comes upon him, right? So again, he's in direct contact there with God in some way. He goes out and he rallies up a large number of people from his own town his own city there in Manasseh. Then he's throughout all of Manasseh, but then even beyond that, tribal borders, right? Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali. So, like we said before, this is a big sort of event that's going on here. In the story of Gideon, right? Both the oppression and the deliverance that's gonna happen here.
Yeah.
It's gonna spread beyond Gideon and his little city.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, real quick. So one of the verses that popped out to me is as we were reading through this and talking about it, was verse 34. The ESV has that translated. It says, "But the Spirit of the Lord clothed
Gideon.
Gideon,
Yeah.
and he sounded the trumpet, and they were all called out and follow him." I'm like the Dungeons and Dragons geek that still lives in me. Like thinks about the holy armor of the Lord
Sure,
was
right.
placed upon Gideon, which made me think, of Ephesians chapter 6, talking about the whole armor of God there, right? I mean, I can't imagine that it was literally any sort of special armor or anything like that. But what is intended for us to understand from that is that God was with Gideon.
Yeah.
Right? And he emboldened Gideon, infusing him with courage and boldness and a duty, a sense of duty and rightness that he was going to go do this great thing that God has called him upon, right? So, what can we learn from this idea of the Spirit clothing Gideon, and does he do that for us today?
Yeah, that's an interesting sort of question, right? And I guess I would go back to kind of the things that you're pointing out, right? Then when we see these things about putting on these things, we see these ideas of the Spirit dwells in us. We see these calls in Ephesians, like you had referenced, and in Romans 12, right? These sorts of pictures of especially in Romans 12, right? That God has graced us with all of it. It is by his grace that he has given us a measure of faith, and then he gives us these gifts for his use in his service, right? The one who preaches and the one who teaches, the one who serves, the one who gives, the one, right? And yet we do that in the fullness of the measure of faith which we have been given, right? And so there's this picture here is that we move and we do these things because of the faith that God has given to us, right? And it's a sort of a similar picture here that Gideon has been given a level of measure of faith now that God is with him in this thing, right? He's seen the evidence of the sign of his the messenger that came and spoke to him. He's heard the voice of God now at least twice. He has acted upon that, and even though there was opposition brought against him, people were going to kill him. Yet he's not killed. He's delivered, right? Because his father speaks this word.
I mean, and God has proven to Gideon already.
I'm with you.
My angel proved to you that the message was true.
Right.
And part of that message was, you shall not die.
Right.
Right. And so Gideon went and did the scary thing, and he didn't die.
Yeah.
So now he's emboldened and full of the Spirit.
Yeah.
And going out, and he's sounding the trumpet. The trumpet was used as a call to arms.
Yeah.
It was not you. It was called to arms for battle or for retreat or for run to safety, or it was really always done for emergency purposes.
Yeah.
And so sounding the trumpet in this context was, hey, Midians are coming.
Right.
It's time for us to put an end to it.
We're gonna shut this down, and that's clear that it's not just an alarm. Hey, they're coming! Everybody, run for the hills!
Right. Because
he also sends messengers, it says, throughout all of the land and summoning people to him. Right. And so, he is emboldened by God, and some of that is the picture here is that the Spirit is upon him in some way, right? Which we'll see later with Samson, like the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. We'll see that when we see things like Saul and things. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him and he prophesied, right? There's this very real manifestation of the Spirit that's happening as well. But what's curious about that, right? You feel like all this is building up to something really amazing, and he's going to come down. And at the chapter ends, we probably just have time to cover this with him still in this phase of like, okay, God, if really, right? I got a whole army together now. I got all that. I've already done all that.
Yeah.
just one more quick
I
check,
just,
right?
I just have just one more little
right.
thing.
One more quick check before we do that.
You know?
So maybe let's read that 36 through 40.
Yeah.
Then Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said. And it was so. When he rose early the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. And then Gideon said to God, let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test just once more with the fleece. Please let it be dry on the fleece only, and all the ground let there be dew. And God did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, and on all the ground there was dew. And so, yeah, he's got the army together. He's called all these people, and he says, God, if you're going to deliver by my hand, as you've said, right, then here I want to know these two more signs, or this one sign. And he does it, and then he goes, can we reverse that just so I can make real sure, and gets the second sign there as well. And Gideon, to his credit, perhaps, I mean, he's clearly coming to God because God keeps answering him in this way, in a way that is almost like this idea of, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief, kind of a thing, right? Because he's like, Lord, do not be angry, right? Just one more thing that I ask here to sort of to know. And I'm curious somewhat as well, because you'll see this play out in the next chapter. This idea where, Lord, if you're going to save Israel by my hand, right, as opposed to that I'm going to do it by myself. Because in the next chapter, we'll get this picture of, we're going to do, God is now going to put him to the test, so he knows that it's me that's doing it and not you by your own awesomeness, right? And so it's almost this answer to the things that Gideon has asked. Gideon, I want to know, Lord, that you are with me and you will deliver. And then God is going to say, now I'm going to show you that I will deliver and not you're doing it. And so you do kind of get this turnabout is fair play kind of thing, where God puts him to some tests as well, to show that it's him who's working this out.
Yeah, that whole test that Gideon has.
Yeah.
Megan and I were talking about this. Like, sometimes I wonder if we've just been culturally taught to have faith that fits inside of a box.
Sure.
Right? When asking for things. Because you read through Genesis and the story of Abraham and Isaac needed a wife. And so Abraham's servant was sent out to find Isaac a wife. Was it Isaac's?
And he'll ask and say, do this thing. How will I know? Right. This will be the sign. Right. Yeah.
It appears like he just comes up with this thing.
Yeah.
Here's how I'm going to know, God.
Right.
Right. When I show up, the woman who you have chosen is going to come out, and she's going to offer me water.
Right.
And then she's going to feed all the camels.
Yeah.
And that's how I'm going to know that this is the, like, we're not, I don't know. Is that just a cultural thing? Like to we would call it test God in that way, but Gideon does it, right? Moses, how will I know? Who will I tell?
That
sent me, right? And obviously they were able to interact a little more directly with God and receive a direct response to some of these things.
Yeah.
But it just makes me wonder, like, what level of faith can we have today, since we have so much more in Jesus?
Yeah, and that's a hard question, right? And I know sometimes, we'll see things we try and figure out, like, what is this that God is trying to tell me to do here or not do, or these kinds of things. And I know sometimes a good advice there perhaps is, take it to other older, wiser Christians whom you trust, right? Hey, here are the things that are going on. Here's the things, right? And in a multitude of counselors, there's safety, right? We see in the Proverbs as well. This sort of idea that, don't just jump to the conclusion that, look, I saw this thing and it must be a sign, God's telling me to do X, right? But perhaps there is a way to say, God, reveal to me that this is what you want me to do in this circumstance, and then go and talk and pray to others about it, right? Hey, what do you feel the Lord is leading in this case, right? And get some wisdom there from others as well. But yeah, we do sometimes hinge a lot on, Jesus' word of, you will not put the Lord your God to the test. Right? Okay, but that was Satan tempting Jesus, right? That's not what's happening here with Gideon,
a
right?
little different,
Gideon is
right?
not
Yeah.
Satan he's not trying to get out of this, right? He's not trying,
Right.
he's looking to have his faith built up in this way, right? And the servant there is like, hey, I'm trusting that you truly do love your servant, my master, right? I'm just a servant here, right? So help me out, right? How am I going to accomplish this on my own,
Like,
Lord?
I don't know.
I don't know who to pick, right? So
I don't know who to pick.
show
I'm
me
gonna
the
need
thing,
some
right?
help
Yeah, I
here,
need some help, right? Is the thing.
Yeah.
That's a little different than Satan coming and saying,
Yeah.
do this thing here and test God in that way.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard thing to understand. I was listening to. Megan and I listened to a podcast of Chris Emerson's podcast. I don't know if you ever listened to him or not, but it was really about the power of the Holy Spirit, and it's a fascinating study. It is really something that we all need to grow our faith in, that topic in and of itself. But one of the points that kind of stuck with me is that we sometimes feel the need to be able to understand all the things in order for us to act. And we're not ever going to fully understand all the things, right?
Yeah.
And especially where the Spirit is concerned. If we set up these rules, this is how the Spirit works now, and
Yeah.
this is it. We're putting limitations on the Spirit that aren't specifically told. We don't know.
Right.
So, but we want to understand, and so because we can't understand a thing, that we put all these rules up, and we put up these barriers, these blocks, and I think that does stifle our faith quite a bit. But I also don't know how much to ask or how far to take that, But I think we should all be able to pray and want to pray that we are increasing in our faith and strengthening our courage and making us more bold to do more in His name.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something we can all probably benefit from.
Yeah.
So, and maybe be like Gideon.
Sure.
Don't be afraid to bring all your worries and your troubles to the Lord, and let Him help you make better decisions. So
it's probably a good place to end
Yeah.
it there, Adam. That's a good sentiment to end it on, I think.
Very good. All right, buddy. Well, hey, we got through chapter 6.
Yeah.
And we will pick it up and see the outcome of Gideon's test and what happens next as we pick it up next week and get into some more of the cool fighting and war and stuff, but that all of us young kids look after, and all of the further like refinement of faith that God calls Gideon to, which is great. One of the best series of faith building stories we have in the Book of Judges, in my opinion. So we'll leave it at that. Any final words, Kev?
No, I think that's fantastic. We'll pick up there next time. Yeah.
All right, everybody. God bless, and we pray that your faith grows evermore every day. See you later.